Okay, good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you here this morning. I'm Reverend Jenna Watkins, and this is the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast. And we're really glad that you've joined us today. So just a reminder, this is a really good time to silence your cell phones if you haven't done so. And if you haven't been to a Center for Spiritual Living, and even if you have, it's always nice to remember these things. We believe there is one God and many paths to that God. We are here to love, honor, and respect and support you, no matter what your divine path is. The Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles. So whoever you are, wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you are very welcome here. So I will be the practitioner today. Edgar is our reader, and our guest speaker is Patrice Rivera. So we're lucky to have her back. As a reminder, July 9th will be our very last service. And we're going to be going to lunch afterwards so that we can just celebrate each other. And we're also going to acknowledge Ron for his service to the church and for his 25th anniversary of being an ordained minister. We're looking for a restaurant right now. I think we're going to try and get into Tuscany Grill in the Rivera shops, whatever that's called. I call it the Rivera Mall, because we might be able to get a private room or a semi-private room where we can all gather. So we're looking at that. So please put it on your calendar and join us so we can celebrate this community because it's so special. Also, since we were honoring Reverend Dr. Ron's 25th anniversary, he's really needing an iPad. I always get wrong, pad. He's really wanting an iPad. So we just thought that anybody who wants to donate in acknowledgement of Ron's anniversary, you can send checks to me, give checks to me, or put it in a card and give it to him that day. But we're like trying to collect some money to help him buy an iPod. So I think I've done it all. Any other announcements I need? Ed, you keep me on track. Okay, so that's it. So let's have another song. So this is time for silent contemplation. So if you'd like to just settle back into your chairs and relax into this moment, this high, holy moment. Recognizing that we are, each of us, a vessel of God. As a vessel of God, I am open to receiving the gifts of the Spirit, the love, the power, the presence, the wisdom, the wealth, the good, all that is necessary for a life filled with Spirit. I am a vessel of all that is good and all that is holy. For I am one with Spirit. And as a vessel, I open my channels to allow this love and this power and this wisdom, this glorious feeling of oneness to flow from me outwards into the universe, into this room, into this building, and this state in this country and out around the whole globe, the love flowing as a vessel from Spirit through me to this world, allowing this world to be encompassed with wholeness and with love and compassion and peace. Holy peace flowing through us outward, encompassing this world. And I am grateful. I am grateful for each and every one of us, recognizing that we are one and that we are vessels. We are vessels here to do good, to hear good, and to grow in our awareness of who we truly are, one with Spirit. And we are blessed this morning with Patrice, Reverend Patrice Rivera. I just graduated you. We're blessed today with Patrice Rivera for her love, her heart, her joy, her wisdom always flows from her. And I'm grateful that I get to share in this experience with her, and each and every one of us will be touched with the love and the joy, be touched with the wisdom, so that we too will walk through the doors today filled with this joy ourselves. And for all of this, I do give thanks, and so it is.
Good morning. Let us imagine that life is a river. Most people are clinging to the bank, afraid to let go and being carried away by the current of the river. At a certain point, each person must be willing to simply let go and trust the river to carry him or her along safely. At this point, he learns to go with the flow, and it feels wonderful. Once she has gotten used to being in the flow of the river, she can begin to look ahead and guide her own course onward, deciding where the course looks best, steering her way around boulders and snags, and choosing which of the many channels and branches of the river she prefers to follow, all the while still going with the flow. That's from Creative Visualizations by Shakti Goin. And my second reading is from This Life is Joy by Roger Teal. Consider this. In our hardened world and our busy lives, amid our problems, issues, and troubles with others, there are openings. These openings are higher realizations that create inner actualizations. Then we see the openings light, even as an inner ember, and let these higher realizations have their way with us. We are ushered into greater frequencies of awareness and expanded dimensions of life mastery. It is then that we experience more lofty and powerful aspects of the authentic self, our spiritual nature, and its profound capacities. It is then that we have the wherewithal to open to more effective responses and answers. It is then that we know with certainty that this is something within us that is always greater than anything facing us. It is then that we expand and transcend. It is then that we can find light in the darkness and open up to a limitless storehouse of opportunities and possibilities. It is then that we become the healers and peacemakers that God, the creative source of all life, has designed each of us to be. It is then, as a mystic put it, that we let God be God in, through, and as us. And the last reading is from Matthew, bear with me, 7. verses 7 and 8. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be open.
Gee, after all that, do you need me?
Let's go to lunch.
Okay, so here's the funny thing about Jenna and her prophetic, what she thought was a flip. So for at least a dozen years, I have had this little niggling to push me towards ministerial school, and I have resisted big time. I resisted becoming a practitioner for, more than a dozen years before I finally gave in to do that. All of this experience and the gift that Ron has given me in allowing me to speak here and realizing that this is my last talk here, I'm looking into ministerial school. So you weren't really promoted, you were just, prophetic in that. You were, she always is. Yeah, stating it as it is. So good morning. Are you being served? Does anybody but me remember the sitcom that was British, a British sitcom on the BBC? You do? Did you think of that when you saw the title? Because that's actually, that's actually how I got the title, was from there. It made me giggle. It was a department store in London set in the 70s, must have been, because I remember the cute little outfits. And it was the only person that I can remember the name of is Captain Peacock, because he really was a peacock. But his whole job at this department store was to stand there and serve people. Are you being served? His whole job was to direct them to where they wanted to go and handling their crises and their problems. So are you being served? We're a little bit different than that. But we get to all play Captain Peacocks. We get to all direct where our thoughts are going and where we are served. We get to play into that mental equivalent, because that's actually what this talk is about, is what is your mental equivalent? A mental equivalent requires us to bring our conscious mind and our subconscious mind into one mind. In fact, did you know, I was amazed when I found this out, that the conscious mind processes 2,000 bits of information a second. Every second, our conscious mind is processing 2,000 bits of information. But you know what's even more amazing is our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind processes 4 billion pieces of information in that same second. Now, granted, part of that 4 billion is our autonomic nervous system. It's what breathes us and blinks our eyes and secretes all the hormones that we need in our body. But still, that leaves an awful lot of room for what we play in our subconscious mind, where it's going. And what we have to look at is, are the things that are going through our subconscious mind actually serving us? Because a lot of the things in our subconscious mind, we don't even realize that are there. They're old memories, they're old things happening from the past, and we let them just keep running and running and running. But here we're going to try and unpack maybe some of those and try and figure out how we can get to that subconscious mind that serves us. Sometimes in this thought process, or in this philosophical movement, we can think that if we have good experiences, or what we label as good experiences, we think that that's because we have a good consciousness. That makes sense, right? But we also look at it as if we have what we label bad or undesirable experiences in our life, that's because of a bad consciousness. And that's not the truth. That's not how it works. that is a limiting belief that does not serve us. Because the truth is that sometimes those things that happen to us that we don't enjoy are absolutely because we are moving forward. Whatever is a challenge is actually growing me. It's growing my belief system and it's growing my mental equivalent, much like the bodybuilder, right? Bodybuilders lifting weights, they're stressing it, they're challenging that weight, they're challenging their body. And it's a little achy and it's a little sore when they finish, but it's growing and they're happy about that. So we need to stand like the bodybuilder in gratitude for the challenges that come our way. Because just like that bodybuilder who has the achy bicep after he's done curls to exhaustion, and he knows that that means, I guess it could be she, knows that that means, yeah, because that's what I used to do. She knows that that means that muscle is growing. Well, mentally muscles, we need to exactly think that same thing. We aren't served by a competition, by thinking we're in competition with the world, because we're not. We're not in competition with anybody else other than ourselves. We're in competition with ourselves to live each moment a little bit kinder, each moment a little bit better, to see a version of ourselves that is, because we're being challenged, we're growing, and we want to grow in that mental equivalent into what we really want. We want to be the good that we seek. And to be that good that we seek, we must confront all that isn't what we want, all that isn't what's serving us. So we need to expand our mental equivalent in every situation to be the truth that we wish to see. Or, not that he didn't have enough quotes, as Ernest said, when we realize that in dealing with our own individuality, we are dealing with self-conscious mind. And we realize that in dealing with subconscious mind, we are dealing with the universal subjectivity. We shall come to understand that we have a creative intelligence at our disposal. And this creative intelligence, when compared with the united intelligence of the entire human race, that united human race intelligence is nothing in comparison. The universal subjective mind, being entirely receptive to our thought, is compelled by its very nature to accept the thought and act upon it, no matter what that thought is. And he goes on further to say, the limit of our ability to demonstrate depends on our ability to provide a mental equivalent of our desires. For the law of correspondence works from the belief to the thing. But it is within our power to provide a greater mental equivalent through the unfolding of consciousness. And this growth from within will finally lead to freedom. When we demonstrate today, what we demonstrate today, tomorrow, and the next day is not as important as the tendency which our thought is taking, the dominant attitude of our mind. If every day things are a little bit better, a little bit happier, a little bit more harmonious, a little bit more health-giving and joyous, if each day we are expressing more life, we are going in the right direction. So part of this talk is also an ode to my mother, because she taught me mental equivalence from a young age. My mother was a gorgeous 96-year-old when she made her transition recently. And she moved from this experience to what I believe is actually graduate school. And mostly, I have been so grateful to have had her as a mom, that when those waves of sadness hit me, I'm almost caught off guard, because I really stand in the blessing that I had with the parents I had. My mom and dad gave me so many mental equivalents that some of them still serve me to this day. My mother taught me how to give graciously. My mother was a baker. She would bake 15 different kinds of cookies at Christmas. Our garage was filled with them. It was Colorado. It was cold. December. It was a freezer in our garage. And she would take, actually, it was my job and then mine and my sister's to take baskets of cookies to all the people on our street. My dad took them into work. My mom was such giving, and baking was one of her loves. In fact, I remember coming home from school 2 to 3 times a week. She'd have hot fresh cookies for me, and of course all my friends loved to come home with me after school because they knew there were hot fresh cookies there. So she taught me how to give. She taught me what joy was. She taught me that giving is joy. She also taught me that somebody else's opinion doesn't matter. My mother wore nurses' shoes, leather nurses' shoes, back when nurses had leather nurses' shoes, but she didn't want white shoes. My mother loved red shoes. So she always took the shoes when she'd buy her new shoes down to the shoe repair guy and have them dyed red. And she would wear her red shoes with her peach or her turquoise or her purple, and people, of course, especially when I was a teenager, people would come in and kind of giggle of, "Is your mom colorblind? Does she know those colors don't go?" But she didn't care, and she would always say, "Well, good shoes are important and this is what I like." She taught me that other people's opinion doesn't matter to me. Of course, my mother could also dress to the nines. She did teach me that one too. And whenever Newsteaders, which was a big store in Colorado at the time, had their shoe sale, she would come out with 5 or 6 pairs of shoes. So the idea that shoes can only be bought at a half a dozen at a time is one of those beliefs that didn't end up serving me. However, my love of shoes still does serve me. Oh, she taught me my value and the value of other people in so many ways. Like, for instance, she would overpay the occasional babysitter that we would have when they would go out. She would overpay them, and she knew she was overpaying them. And she told me once, actually, I think it was my dad that told me, no, the reason that they overpaid them was because they wanted the babysitter to know that taking care of me was precious to them. And they also wanted the babysitter to know that they appreciated them and their time. So she taught me how to give. My mom also taught me how to always find something to praise in everyone. She was always complimenting people on their hair or their shoes or their clothes or their smile or their thoughts. And yet she was always so humbly gracious when she got compliments back. She almost made it seem like a compliment back to the person who was complimenting her. She taught me graciousness. She taught me that I was important, because every day after school, and if my friends came home from school with me, they sat down at the table with me. She would sit down, she would stop what she was doing. And I tell you, my mom kept a sparkling wheat teas that you could eat off of her floor, but it's not a tease. It was serious. You could eat off of any surface in her floor. She was a meticulous housekeeper. And yet she taught me that I was more important than that. And that was pretty important to her, because when I came home from school, she would sit at the kitchen table and we'd have cookies. and she would listen to me telling her all the things that happened, whether they were good things or things that I didn't like. She would just listen. In fact, I remember, when I was a teenager and I'd come home, I never had a curfew. They would always ask me what time I thought I'd be home, and I was usually home by that time. And my mom was always in bed, but I knew she was never asleep. And I tiptoe over to her side of the bed, and her eyes would pop up and she's, do you want tea? And we would go out to the kitchen and she would make us cups. She had coffee. I don't know how she could go back to sleep after that, but she did. I had tea, and we would talk about it. We would talk about everything. I would tell her everything. She would always listen. I made me realize how important I was. She was my most fierce supporter. I learned from her how to stand up for what's right and how to stand up for other people. She was always at school trying to help teachers understand that a left-handed kid looked at things differently from a right-handed kid, because they didn't want to acknowledge that. And my mother was going to make sure they did. And they did. She did it kindly. She did it graciously. She did it lovingly. Things like one time when the teacher said, oh no, she can't have her left-handed scissors. My mom just said, great. So if you think all scissors are fine, will you please cut that construction paper with these scissors? And handed her my left-handed scissors. She couldn't do it. I got my left-handed scissors. She never yelled, although she did have a flash in her eyes and a set of her jaw that said, oh, look out. But it took a long time to get there, and you ran when you saw it. My mom was always involved in causes. In fact, she and the Colorado representative, Pat Schroeder, were good friends. And they created me. They hauled me to all kinds of places and situations to stand up for things, that affected me, and to stand up for things that I didn't even realize affected me. But that's who my mom was. She never let me think that my perspective was the only perspective. In fact, when I'd come home from school after being bullied, red hair and glasses, curly red hair and glasses, you get bullied a lot. She would listen and she would soothe, but then she would also try to help me understand what could possibly be the meaning of why the bullies were bullying me, so that I looked at things from a different perspective. So I learned that both sides of things can serve me, and I learned what doesn't. In fact, my parents made it easy for me to know the love of God, and I never understood the idea of a finite God. I understood an infinite God. I didn't understand a finite God with human qualities, who judges, who is vengeful or punishing. My mother believed that we might be the only Bible that some people saw, my dad as well. And she acted from that. When my dad died, her light dimmed a bit. My parents had a love story of the ages. And in fact, I remember when I was going through my third divorce, and I was devastated that I was going to be disappointing my mom. She told me that, one, that wasn't possible. And two, well, Liz Taylor had been divorced 8 times and she still loved Liz Taylor. So what the heck? Why could she definitely loved me more than Liz Taylor? But the third one was that I needed to let go of a marriage looking like theirs, because she told me that what they had was special and rare, and that I needed to find what my path was and find what I deserved. I needed to let go of what didn't serve me. Part of that was that marriage, but I needed to step into what did serve me. My youngest daughter calls my mom the OG feisty bitch. Ooh, can I say that here? I just did. And she raised 2 of us FBs, and then she helped me raise 4 more. And it has served us quite well. She always told me how proud she was of me. She made me realize that has how God feels about me. That even when I thought that she would be disappointed in me for getting divorced again and that wasn't possible, she made me realize that that's how God feels about me. That's what Spirit feels about me. There is nothing that I can do that will change that. Have you all seen the movie The Shack or read the book The Shack? It is a beautiful story, and how do I say this without giving away? You got to see it. It's wonderful. It's delightful. And at one point, there is a man who's riling against God, and he wants punishment for the people who've perpetrated something horrendous on him. And God is standing before him as a big black woman. I'm sorry, I have to give that away. I love that. And said, okay, so you have 2 children. Tell me which one of your 2 children you want to punish. Which one of your 2 children do you want to send to hell? And he says, I can't. And he goes, so you think I can? You think I can judge my children if you can't judge yours? All I do is love them. I learned that from my mom. I learned that from my dad. I learned that to find peace within myself in a situation. I learned that I am part of a greater good, and it is my job to be what I want to see. I learned to have a mental equivalent for what served me. And of all of these memories, from the bullies to the loving support of my parents, all of those memories are in my 4 billion bits of information that my subconscious is processing every second. In fact, how many billions was that, and how many seconds it took me to say that? I get to figure out which one of those serve me, which one of those stay, and which one of those I can change. And how do we change them? Well, Ernest has something to say about that too. A mental equivalent must be provided through which the law may operate as a law of liberty if we are to be free. This does not mean we must please the law, for it is impersonal and neither knows nor cares who uses it, nor for what purpose. But because it's impersonal, it is compelled by its very nature to return to the thinker exactly what it thinks into it. The law of mental equivalence must never be overlooked, for whatsoever a man soweth, so shall he reap. Quantum physics tells us that 2 molecules could not occupy the same space at the same time. Well, neither can 2 thoughts. So all we have to do is replace those thoughts that don't serve us with ones that do. And the first thing that we have to do for that is to acknowledge that those thoughts are there. We have to look at them and go, oh, I've been believing that. Well, that doesn't serve me. And then that second way we do it is by consistently and consciously redirecting our thoughts until those old thoughts don't show up anymore. We believe in an infinite loving power, not a finite one. God can't be finite. God is absolutely infinite. So the old thought patterns of an angry, judgmental, temperamental divine that keep track of every transgression, well, that doesn't serve me. That is creating a divine in my image rather than the reverse of I am created in the divine's image. For as it says in Matthew, it is done to us as we believe. So when we believe in judgment, we feel judged because we judge. When we believe in acceptance and inclusion, we feel accepted and included. To be the change we want to see, we must step into those qualities and be them. This is how we can serve the world. We serve by being the best me we can be. Or as Jesus said, by taking the log out of my eye before I look at the splinter in yours. That's having a mental equivalent. Joe Dispenza says that to look at all the emotions, that we have to look at all of the emotions which have kept us tied to the past and decide what belongs in my future. If it doesn't, we let it go and leave it behind, as well as letting go of that memory that doesn't serve us. The act of becoming is an act of overcoming. We're overcoming that doesn't serve us. Was my mom perfect in all the memories that I have? Well, no. I remember one time yelling at her, running down the hallway, going into my room, slamming the door, which was a no-no, and sticking my tongue at her behind my closed door. My mother was on the other side of the door and she said, "Don't you stick your tongue out at me." How did she know that? Okay, so that's not one of my memories that I enjoyed for a while, but I got to pull it out and look at it more humorously, especially after I became a mom and I figured out how she knew that. I can laugh at it now because I can see that my memories serve me because I see the growth. I see the love. I see what does serve me. You know, when we were getting ready to go on our long motorhome journey, we had a lot of stuff we had to get rid of. We were paring down a 3-story, 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house into a motorhome and a pod for some of the stuff. But we had this practice that was really wonderful because some of us get rid of things better and some of us hold on to things better. And so our practice was we would hold things and just ask it, does this serve me? And it would answer immediately. And I mean, we'd get the yes or no. And if it was a no, we would, we would thank it for our service. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being in my service. Thank you. And I'm releasing you on to something else. I suggest that that's how we release those thoughts that we find that come up, that we don't maybe enjoy, that don't serve us. We thank them because they came about from something that served us. We need to thank them for their service and let go of them because they no longer serve us. It was freeing with things. It's even more freeing with thoughts. So my challenge to you all this week is to see when something comes up that you like or don't like. Am I being served with this, by this? Ask yourself, does this serve me? Take a look at those beliefs and those thoughts. Are they serving us? We get to be our own Captain Peacock, and we get to direct things to the trash or into our mental equivalent, into our future. We get to let go of what doesn't serve us. We can live that rich, full life we deserve, for we are created in the image and likeness of the divine, and we can choose to be joyous or choose to be angry. We get to choose our thoughts every day. We have 4 billion bits of information per second working for us if we choose them to. We get served by what we believe. Now let us pray. So if you get comfortable with feet on the floor, gently either closing your eyes or softening your focus, breathing into that heart center, that space of truth, that space of knowing, that space where we really remember where God is. For in that space, I know and absolutely know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is only one energy, one love, one power, one effervescent everything, always available, always surrounding me, always supporting me, always saying yes to whatever I put out to it. I know that I am in charge of what it is I want said yes to. I know that I choose my thoughts. I choose to replace my thoughts that don't serve me. I choose to appreciate all of my thoughts, and I choose to move towards the thoughts that serve me. I choose to let go of that which has run before that no longer serves me. I choose to stand in the truth and the realization of who I really am, the divine energy created in the image, maybe not physical image, but loving consciousness image of the divine creator. I choose. And I am so grateful for knowing that I get to choose. I am so grateful for my choices. I am so grateful for knowing that there is a law and a love in this universe that we call the divine, that we call spirit, that we call universal love, that we call whatever it is we want to call it. I am so grateful for knowing that it is always working in my behest and my behalf. I am so grateful for how I show up in this world. And I am so grateful for knowing that I am being served by who I am. And so all that's left to do is to step out of the way and know that God is God. And so it is.
Okay, this is our time for our offertory. So can my usher come forward? He's a trainee. Please, please affirm aloud with me the offertory. I live in a consciousness of good, divine love, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. And incense, we had a beautiful prayer from Reverend Patrice. Why don't we stand and do the closing song?
And here we go. A beautiful song about being peace on earth. On earth and let begin. Peace on earth, the peace that was sent to me. In God has been, and we all are be. Let's walk with each other in perfect harmony. Peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. Step I take, let this be my joyous sound. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. There be peace on earth and blessed be.
All right, and please repeat after me. I've been singing that song for
Being here, thanks for having me.
50 years.
Yeah. It's 45 for me. So
Yeah.